welcome to the Memoir channel. My name is Nikki Smart, and today I'm going to be speaking with Marguerite Richards and Marina Reza about this book that's not actually a memoir, but it's a collection of true stories. And it is called The Ordinary Chaos of Being Human, True Stories, Soul-Bearing Moments, No Apologies. So Marina Reza has a short story in there called Blood Habits, and it is a really dense story, a lot going on there. And Marguerite Richards is the lady who oversaw the entire project, put it all together, edited it, and got it out into the world. So let's go talk to them both and find out a bit more about the ordinary chaos of being human. Hi, Marguerite. Welcome to the Memoir channel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. I'm excited to have you here. So I know Marina's not with us just yet, but I thought we'll just go ahead and then hopefully she'll join and we'll see how that works. But yeah,
Sure.
so I know that you are an American writer, you do editing, you focus on memoir and diverse voices, but you aren't actually in America. You now live in Sri Lanka. And hang on a minute, I see Marina's coming to join us. Good, so let's let her in. Here we go, that's good. All right, hello. Hi, Marina.
Hi.
Can you hear us, see us?
Yes, can you hear me and see me?
Absolutely, yes.
Cool. Hey, Margaret.
So we're actually already recording. I hope that's okay. We're going. All right. So I was just asking Marguerite, I was saying that I'd like to know what made her put the book together. What made you put the book together?
What made me put the book together? So that's always one of the most difficult questions to answer. But I suppose that I've always wanted to do a book, and I knew that there was a need to create more platforms to have more diverse voices out there, and I knew that they weren't my stories to tell. So I went out looking for stories, and I also realized that it was personal storytelling, true stories, that was the best way to do this book, to put together the book. I recognize that particularly with people of Muslim heritage and Muslim backgrounds, that was a place where I felt like we were missing the wide spectrum that actually exists. I mean, there's a 1.8, and then, I mean, the number's always growing, 1.8 billion Muslims living in the world, and that would only be the people who would actually, tick the box on the census, world census. So, and that is those people that are not necessarily practicing Islam, or, would just kind of come loosely from, Muslim background, Muslim heritage, were born in predominantly Muslim countries. And that there's this idea of this monolith, particularly since 9/11, and in the United States and worldwide, really, where people are all just kind of shoved into one box of this idea, and it's perpetuated by the media, because the media has such a narrow focus, and there just doesn't seem to be as much of an opportunity. And I mean, it was kind of just a moment where everything was coming together, where I was recognizing the limitations that we had in the publishing industry in general, worldwide, how the media functions as a system, and the systematic issues that we have there. So I just saw that, and I thought, well, I'm not really an activist in any way, but I'm an editor, and that's something I know how to do. So that's where I started.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it seems like quite a large project. And I know there's 42 stories in there?
Yeah, I'm always getting the number wrong, because I always want to include, so there's actually 41 authors, but there are 42 authors. There are 41 stories, and the 42nd one would be the lady who wrote the foreword, Meena Shah. So it is a story too. So I can, and the first edition actually had 35. So this is the expanded edition.
And it just came out though, right, in June this year?
Right, that's right. Worldwide. It came out this year, yeah.
All right, and so Marina, you're one of the contributors, right? So you wrote one of the stories, and yours was called, it was Blood Habits. And I mean, it was a very dense story. I just felt, oh wow, there's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot going on. So maybe you want to just give a little brief overview of what your story is about.
Yeah, of course. And I just want to say thank you so much for having us on.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
It's an honor. Yeah, I think for me, In this essay, I'm exploring, I think the essay was sort of born out of this frustration of living in this question of like, what is my genealogy? How do I have access to records, to archive? And the essay begins with a moment of me sitting with my partner at the time in college, and really like living in this question and feeling this envy of like, I can't just Google my family and like find out, see their lineage. And because I grew up in, I grew up in a very Muslim household. I was born in Bangladesh, grew up in New York City. I currently live in Berlin, Germany for the past 5 years. And I think growing up, my parents, it's that sort of the dilemma of being a diaspora kid, right? Like your parents immigrate and you are raised with these expectations to behave and act a certain way. And what happens when you go against those values? What happens when, it's, yeah, and your parents, like anytime I would ask my parents about like, or no, I wouldn't ask my parents. That was the thing. I wasn't my parents. And if I did ask a question here and there, it was always this like sanitized version of like, my mom was always like, I was the perfect daughter. I never disobeyed my parents. And so I think for me, I'm thinking a lot about family secrets. I'm thinking a lot about shame. I'm thinking about addiction. Like I once heard shame and addiction are Siamese twins, and that has always stuck with me, and how, one enables the other. So it's just,
I mean, yeah, there was so much there, and all of it was quite heartbreaking actually, because, there's yeah, I mean, and I kind of like the way you just gave little hints of this and a little hint of that. But I mean, there's so much there. And then I saw on your Instagram, you said you're writing a whole manuscript. I'm like, oh, thank goodness, because I want to know more. I need to know much more. But I realized there was a lot of sort of family secrets and not very much open discussion. And I was wondering how much sort of, like you said, growing up with these Muslim laws, and it seems like there was a lot of societal laws, like really strict stuff. Like you spoke, I think it starts with the girl holding hands with the boy and she gets caught, so they send her back home because you're not allowed to hold someone's hand. And I mean, these are like super strict, right? Which in America, they don't exist. So I was wondering how, yeah, that's obviously the effects that you were feeling, right?
right. Yeah, it's funny even like using the word law, because it's like, and I think actually this has also been explored. I think there are also other Bangladeshi contributors in the essay. There was an essay I was reading last night about like, you just don't date. Like you're not supposed to date, and if you do, like it has to be done with utmost like secrecy. And there's this huge culture of fear of like, what will the neighbors think? And it ultimately is never really about the child. It's almost about, and I understand this idea of like preserving an image, because I think I'm at a place where I have so much compassion for my parents. Like they only raised me the ways in which they knew how. They couldn't have done it any other way.
Right.
And it's a reckoning that's quite painful and brings up a lot of grief. So
But it's lovely that you can recognize it. That's huge, because then you can start to heal it and sort of, I mean, understanding is everything. And I think Marguerite, you said something about, in order to like stop hurting each other, we need to understand each other, right? Which is part of why you wanted true stories.
And I think that so much, it's so in memoir writing is really one of the only place. I mean, that's the main place for me where so much of that getting to know can happen, and it's through the vulnerability that's expressed. You can use these, ideas, and you can share these ideas, but it's when you get into the story that you really can, so much can carry through. I think the reason why I chose Marina's story, Blood Habits, was because she was really able to just right away kind of take you into something so vulnerable, and that just really captured my attention. It's just very intimate in the nature of the relationship between Marina and her mother, and I loved it because it was just so honest, and I guess you can do that with fiction, but when you know that this is a real story and this is a real person, and what they dealt with, and that you can feel that relationship come through in the writing, that's how you get to know people, that's, and then you don't even, it doesn't even matter anymore, what are your gripes with that country's politics, it's like, who cares, I know this person. I don't know if you want, I asked Marina to come up with some parts to read, but I was just looking over the story.
Yes, please. If that's
I don't know what you prepared, Marina, but this part that just starts with Mimi is economical. I mean, that's the part that was just like, that. Did you have a particular idea of where you wanted to read?
Yeah, actually, I chose a small selection, and that was
different part.
That was in it. That was part of it.
Oh, good.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'm going to put you on speaker view, Marina, so that it's all you. So here you go.
Thanks, Nikki.
You're welcome.
All right. So Mimi is my mom, and sort of in the beginning, I start with this question of what do we remember about a life and who controls the narrative? If the number of habits Mimi and I share is any indication, my habits may become similar to hers as I grow older. I might even become a sort of second-rate Mimi. Our collective habits include clipping coupons, clipping articles, picking scabs, feeling slightly nauseous after sipping a cup of tea, hers with milk, mine with lemon, and eventually milk, bending the edge of a page and pushing it back out to see the edge curve up, by which point we start crinkling another edge, crinkling our hair from damp buns, sliding our fingers inside jars to swipe out what's left, eating spoonfuls of powdered coffee creamer when the other one is not looking. We easily accumulate dark rings under our eyes. We have a poor ability to delay gratification. And then I'm just going to skip ahead a few paragraphs. In 2013, Mimi's father, whom I called Nana John, died while I was detoxing at the psychiatric ward in Bellevue Hospital. My stay was instigated from a typical episode of blackout drinking. It was routine at that point, waking up in emergency rooms, not knowing how or who got me there. I missed Nana John's funeral, and Mimi lied about my absence. She once mentioned Nana John was said to have liked his drink too. Mimi, what do you remember about delivering me? What was your first impression of Papa? Did you know he was in love with another woman? When did you first have sex? Use a tampon? And why do you seem to equate the two? Tell me about your experience with large bodies of water. And why do my large brown glasses bother you? To which she responded, "Akta gayer motod dakha jay," or they make you look gay. Most of what I know about my family is what I've witnessed myself, and I have not witnessed very much, so I cannot say much about the history that is not mine. I like to think my mom, Mimi, and I are more likely to share our habits than our histories. It's been over 5 years since we've spoken to each other. I never told her I moved to Berlin, Germany from New York City over 5 years ago. Upon Googling my name, this is something she may find out. I'll stop there.
Yeah. I mean, ow. So let me ask you first about the alcohol. So is alcohol permitted in Bangladesh? I mean, I don't know what the rules are, because I know in some countries the laws are very strict about alcohol.
Do you mean like, is it permitted in the country? Or
yeah,
like...
I just know there's a lot of taboo around alcohol. I mean, in America there isn't, but I know you grew up in such a different environment at first, and then you moved, so it must have been so strange.
Yes, so we immigrated to New York City when I was 1.
Okay, so you didn't, okay.
Yeah, so, but within my household, my parents didn't drink or take drugs or even smoke cigarettes. And I talk about this in the essay. My family part of my dad's side of the family is also in the film industry, and both of my grandfathers were film directors, and there was also this like mystery and enigma around them, and to know that if there was a history of addiction in my family, I would never know about it,
Right.
because no one knew it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm curious, so you haven't reconnected with your mom at this point?
I have not, and it's something I'm sort of working through. It's like for my own sort of mental health and healing. For me, really helpful to go no contact. And I know there's sort of this taboo around this topic. I know the New Yorker recently published an article about how going no contact with parents is now trending or something.
Oh, good. So you're trending right now.
Oh my gosh. I have to see that. That is so awful to me that the New Yorker could put out such a subject, because it sounds like, I mean, because they have so much authority, you know, so doesn't it influence people on a psychological level to be saying that something is a trend like this? I mean, that's weird.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if they're trending, but I think there's more awareness around how, and it's this question of, is it that it's happening more, or is it that there's more awareness? Is it because of social media that we're talking about it more? We don't really know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, ultimately, I hope that you can, you know, find a bridge that's comfortable for you, you know, because, but yeah, wow.
I think another reason why I love this story so much is because it was able to provide such a mirror reflection of how you feel. And I felt like it was so like non-judgmental, like about yourself or about anyone else, but at the same time it was a strong impression, you know. I mean, just the way that you also end it, you know, that open-endedness of, she may or may not know what's going on with me, you know. And I just thought that was just so beautiful to be able to be so open and share that, you know, real reflection, like an imprint, like a stamp, you know. This is the timestamp right now, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was very dense, so I felt like there was so much information there in a very, you condensed it, but it's like, oof, there's a lot going on here. So that's why I encourage you to write this manuscript, get that out, because I feel like it's going to be an interesting read. And maybe it'll be really cathartic for you too. I feel like that memoir writing usually is, right? Marguerite, have you written any memoirs?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm working on one right now. I'm working on my first right now, and really my foray into memoir was with this book. As I mentioned before, like I knew that I needed stories that were from people living all over the world. I knew I needed diverse voices, but I didn't really know whether I was going to be doing fiction or nonfiction. And then when I realized that I needed to be, actually, I didn't even know that I was calling it memoir. I wanted nonfiction essay. You know, when I first started, I wanted creative nonfiction. And then I realized very quickly as the submissions were rolling in that we were looking at short memoir. And then so many of the writers were actually they were working on their own memoirs while they were pulling chapters out of their memoirs in order to submit something. So now from that, I have built this memoir editing business. Now I'm, doing all sorts of developmental editing with lots of writers, that were featured in this book, because it was just such a wonderful experience to get to know people and to try to help them, birth these incredible stories that they have about their lives, and also ideally, I mean, I'm always encouraging people to infuse their work with as much as their personal culture as possible, because I think that's what's so important, so much missing. Like with Marina, it's, Marina is showing a particular kind of, I don't know if microcosm is the right word, but, it's how, her family heritage is actually, transplanted in America, and lives and thrives in America in that way. And it also creates its own kind of story, that is
absolutely
very different from culture back home, and that's something that is very much a part of America and a part of the and all over the world. People are traveling, people are families are immigrating everywhere. So it shows, that yeah. But me personally, I am working on one. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I think you're quite right. I mean, we really need to know more about each other. We always sort of read, the same stuff. So we sort of, oh, well, this is what's right. And then anything else seems foreign and wrong. So it's really good. Let's just, open that up. But I was going to say, how did you get from America to Sri Lanka?
Oh, I met a Sri Lankan.
Okay.
I've always traveled for love. I lived in France, I lived in Chile, and now I'm living in Sri Lanka. But I finally married the Sri Lankan. I finally married the Sri Lankan one. We met in San Francisco, and he wanted to come. He wanted to come back home. He'd been living in the United States for 20 years for his whole adult life, and wanted to come back here. And I'm always open for adventure, and I can work and live anywhere. And I had never spent any time in Asia, so I said, let's try this out. And here we are, 2 babies later.
And I mean, is that quite a, was that,
this one is the third baby.
I said your third baby. Was that quite a big cultural change for you then? I mean, that's
huge. Yeah, huge. I mean, living in Chile and living in France, and also living in Holland for when I was younger. I mean, it's much more. It feels like it approximates, the culture that I know from the United States a lot more. But living in Asia is a completely different thing.
right.
Also, living on an island, like this kind of island life mentality in Asian island life mentality is very, very different. And it's been amazing. I mean, I've learned so much, and it's a wonderful place to raise children, that's for sure.
Yeah. And Marina, you're in Berlin now, so how's your German?
Oh. Do you speak German?
I do actually, because my mom was German, so that's easy. But I mean, that's also a big jump from New York to Berlin. That's quite a different. Yeah. And you've been there a while though, right?
Yeah, over 5 years here. I'm here on an artist visa, like a freelance visa. It's in so many ways, it's what I appreciate is it's so much more manageable a city than New York City. Like I always felt so lonely in New York. Like I never really found my people, like my communities. And I've really found that here. And granted, I am in this like English speaking bubble in Berlin. I think I'm at A1.2 at the moment. That might be
sehr good. Well, yeah, I'm in an English speaking bubble in Portugal, and my Portuguese is pretty shabby. So yeah, we've all got to learn new languages here.
Right.
And
I'm here. Right. I'm right there with you.
There's like a sense of loneliness, right? Of like, I feel like I walk out onto the streets and it feels like everyone knows something that I don't like. And yeah, and I'm curious about if, living in Portugal and Sri Lanka, like disconnect.
I think that language really makes a huge difference with that. Because I remember, I mean, I'm not there yet. I'm working on Sinhala. I'm very, very slow to learn it. But when I came back from living in Latin America and I learned Spanish, when I moved back to Los Angeles, and I felt like, even though that's where I'm from, this entire new world was opened up to me, because all of a sudden I could understand what all these Spanish-speaking people in Southern California were all the voices came alive to me, and I realized that I had just been not hearing it, and so I think that we learn those languages in the places we live. It's going to infinitely open up our lives
absolutely
in those places too.
I mean, I spend a lot of time in coffee shops, and I always want to make friends with the baristas. And you can't do that if you can't speak the language. And it's like, I can't do that little like, hey, how are you? And what's up? And and I'm slowly starting to do it. But yeah, and actually most of the people can speak English here. So they let me struggle for a bit, and then they just switch to English so that I can stop slaughtering their language. Anyway, so okay. I am going to put your website, both your websites. You don't have a website, Marina, you have an Instagram account. What would you like me to put for a link so that
Yeah.
people can find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, and also I have a website. It's just marinareza.com.
Okay, perfect. Then I'll put that, and Marguerite too. And well, maybe there's a link for the book as well.
Yeah, there is actually you can use ordinarychaosforbeinghuman.com. That goes straight to the book page on my website.
Perfect. Well, I'll put all those links under here. And I just want to thank you both very much for coming on and chatting with me. And I wish you both the best of luck in your further adventures.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And writing. And listen, when you've both written your memoirs, come back. Let's talk about those. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. Well,
okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's me trying my German. Bis zum nächsten Mal.
Oh, so gut. Ja, wirklich gut. Bye. Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen.